daily in Nigeria. Today, the Nigerian printing industry, of course, has advanced. Globalization has set in. They are meeting up in terms of quality. It's no longer a matter of quality and all that. Why do you still, well, you've talked about high cost. What exactly are you talking about when you say high cost? Is it because of importation of the raw materials? Is that this real challenge you're facing? Or are we having some form of, I don't know, capital flight, or I don't know, maybe you need to tell us.
Yes, exactly. It's the issue of is the issue of raw materials being imported. 90% of raw materials used for printing in Nigeria are imported, and when they come in, the printers they have to make profits too. And so when we print these books locally, at the end of the day, they are sold at very high cost, and people are not able to afford them. And another thing is the issue, for example, the issue of social provision of social amenity, the availability of social amenity. Like we have the problem of epileptic power supply in Nigeria. And so when power is not stable, when the raw materials are not available, then you can just imagine how it will be possible for us to be able to produce, to meet the huge demand that we have. And so we are compelled, really, the situation compels us to go overseas to print where the power is stable, where we are assured of quality, though we know that Nigerian printers can also print quality books. But over there, power is stable, paper is available, raw materials are available, and quality is assured. And so where we have the problem of non-availability of things like, the raw materials, things like paper, the ink, and all of that in Nigeria, and we know that, okay, if we go elsewhere, we can get all of this and get our jobs done and delivered on time, then we are just compelled by the situation to do this. But I think if the government will look into this industry and see how much Nigeria is losing by not investing. Really, our printing work is capital expensive. The business is capital expensive. I think just like the government is trying to invest or contribute into other industry or sectors, like recently governments investing in the film industry, I think government should start to look at how they can invest in the printing industry as well, because the printing industry, if we must know, is very, very vital. Its role is very, very vital in boosting the standard of our education. And if at all we are going to get a quality education in Nigeria across to Nigerian children and all other persons in the country, we have to invest in the printing industry to be able to achieve this.
All right, Mrs. Victoria Shogule, thank you very much. We'll come back to you in the course of this conversation. Alhaji Yahya, I'm fine, of course. You know, the number of issues have been raised now. We touched on some of these ones at the beginning, namely local capacity to meet the printing demands that we have. We'll come again for the benefit of our viewers in the course of this conversation to break it down, to say, look, what are the printing needs that we have, newspaper, educational, corporates, and so on and so forth. We'll break it down together with your heavy-duty equipment that you require. Bayo Atoyebi, former Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Press Council. I can't almost remember, the last time that some newspapers purchased newsprint from any local manufacturer, assuming there's any at the moment. And considering, as Alhaji Ali said at the beginning, that this is a vital input in newspaper business, as well as, of course, in other aspects of printing, why the stakeholders, the Nigerian Press Organization, have not seen this, as a clarion call to deal with this particular problem. You keep depending on the outside suppliers for this input. Why has this been so, Bayo?
Well, the Newspaper Proprietors Association, to my mind and to my knowledge, have several times made overtures to government complaining about high cost of printing material for the newspapers. You will recall that, for instance, I once met an Ethiopian, and upon knowing that I'm in Nigeria, his first remark was that Nigeria, the independence of Nigeria was won on the pages of the newspaper. And that points to the fact that the first newspaper in Nigeria was Iwe Iroyin. And in the Yoruba land, there's an expression that Orokpo no we kobo. That is, there's a lot of information in the booklet of a penny. The newspaper was sold then at a penny. Today, a newspaper, the cheapest you can get is between 150 to 200 naira. Now, how many people can afford that? If information is power, the high cost of newspapers on the street is beyond the reach of any ordinary man. And in a democracy, the more enlightened you have people, the better for the democracy. And therefore, newspapers have almost gone beyond the reach of the ordinary man. If you go back, come up north, Gaskiya Tafi Kobo, which started far back in Zaria, Gaskiya Tafi Kobo simply means truth is more valuable than a penny. Again, it was the emphasis of the fact that the newspaper cost little, but there was a lot of benefit from it. And for several years, in fact, there was a time a move was made when Okoboku was going down by an arm of the Newspaper Proprietors Association that something should be done to revive it, and if possible, to encourage them to have shares in it so that they will be able to sustain it. Unfortunately, the privatization that saw the sale of Okoboku was on the side that it will enhance local production of newsprint. Unfortunately, from the report we had from you, that has not met the expectation of the privatization. Jeba paper mill is nothing to say about, so is also at a working. But newspapers have a very high cost of input, apart from printing material, ink, and other several items. You recall that on this same program, Good Morning Nigeria, there was a time we highlighted that about 7 broadcast stations and about 8 to 10 other newspaper prints have not been able to pay salaries of their journalists. Again, it goes to this high cost of production. Currently, as we are talking, there's hardly any newspaper in Nigeria that has a daily production level of about 450,000. And so, to break even is difficult for the newspapers, and even the few they produce that is on the street is beyond the reach of the ordinary man. So the best solution and the best approach is to look inwards. How do we revive this production outfits we have in the 3 output? To what extent will it meet the newspaper print that we require in the country? Because apart from printers, apart from newspaper printers, there are the commercial printers. There are those who indulge in commercial printing and security. Engaging in some level of security printing too, but they all require quality paper. And you have had the lamentation of the lady from Ibadan, who says that most of the paper that is imported in the country are below the required grammage, and therefore it affects the quality of the output. That is, again, a challenge for standard organizations of Nigeria. So all aspects of government for quality, for production, needs to be engendered so that we can meet this challenge. If information is power, and if we have to get access to many people, because if you compare the level of literacy in the days when newspaper played a prominent role in liberating our nation, because the first television came up in 1959, but then in those days there was radio, and the radio was under the control of the colonialists, and therefore the newspaper, particularly West African Pilot, championed by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, championed the cause of informing the public, engaging a level of awareness. We are now in an era of waging war against corruption, several vices, and we need all arms of the media to carry on this prominent campaign. Therefore, it is very important that that aspect is looked critically into, because it's affecting on the industry.
Yeah, Bayo and Claire, one point that I would like us to pursue further, and this is going to the Chief Operating Officer of People's Daily, Ali Emali. I know that, you are in the business of newspaper production, and therefore it shouldn't be your headache ordinarily, how ink is produced, how plates are produced, how newsprint is produced. But considering that newsprint, and the other inputs are very crucial to you, the much that one hears from time to time, that's the campaign usually by your umbrella body, that's the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, is for government to reduce the duty on newsprint, ink, and and plates. But why is it that as a group, efforts have not been made to say, hey, listen, how do we energize local production?
Well, that is the billion-naira question, because sometimes in the heat of trying to get the newspaper out to the newsstands, we forget this very crucial question you raised about how do we engender, or how do we have local production to meet this requirement. And you can see that the Nigerian market, because it's very huge, the demand is there. It will always be there so long we have the region population. But unfortunately, until all the time, I remember instances where the Newspapers Proprietors Association of Nigeria has had discussions with the government, especially with the CBN. I remember last year we met as a group, we met with officials of the government led by the CBN governor last year, before this administration came into office. And then we thought, because at that time the Naira was beginning to have a free fall, and because of that the cost of production rose by about 30 to 50%. And then if you look at the cover price of newspapers, newsprint, like we said earlier, is only one of the which is very crucial anyway, of the requirements to produce newspapers. The plates, the ink, and other variables come into play, other consumables. But majorly is the newsprint. But